And good evening. It's March 26, 2024, and we're in our next collection of discussions on our Outside the Class series. It's another series from Tim Mackie called Eat This Book. On TheDustyFeet.com in the Outside the Class section, we have the Eat This Book source video section set up for review, right? Because the purpose of Outside the Class, if you'd listen to the in-class lecture first, they would be found in the source video playlist, right? We try to keep these to about 15 to 20 minutes or so. We want to make them easy to catch and easier to catch up on. So we're going to continue our Eat This Book series with Gideon, Testing Faith, on Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet. And before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, it's when you click the subscribe button. The reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, it's when you click that like button, because that is the way that YouTube chooses to share these to more people, if they wish. So Eat This Book, Gideon, Testing Faith. And this is part 3 of 4, okay? Like an opening to a movie, the camera pans down from a beautiful sky to a man at a wine press, threshing wheat. You pause. Someone's not very good with their writing, because that's not supposed to be happening here. Gideon's working his grain in the wrong place. Why? Because he needs to hide it from the Midianites. I got to applaud the ingenuity we're working grain in a wine press, because remember, the Midianites were raiding the spoils. They were stealing the harvests. They got none of the work and all of the gain. I think we like that thought, maybe, just not against us. But Gideon's working it. When this messenger shows up, this messenger, because it's really more accurate a term, right? We use the term angel, and then that expected picture appears, the wings, white robe, blah, 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 blah. But then the real discussion begins. The messenger delivers his, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." It's interesting that Gideon does not balk at the warrior part. But isn't this God's fault that we're in this predicament? Seems I'm not so sure that God is with us, I think Gideon's saying. Well, why do you think I'm here doing what I'm doing where I'm doing it? Yeah. There's a quote from an author, Walt Whitman. "Be curious, not judgmental." And that quote fits in so many places, really. Gideon's response, he judges the message. That can't be right. Just look around you. Gideon doesn't ask the messenger, "How can that be? I don't understand. I can't see it." To be clear, I'm not judging Gideon. Quite the contrary. I can see myself in him, and it's not one of my most proudest moments. It's an interesting point to ponder that we only believe that God is with us when it's good and not when it's not so good. Because we don't most often truly believe that God is with us when we behave and when we misbehave. Because think about it. Gideon claims only part of the story. He only brings up the picture that works for him. God did great things with us, and now we're not seeing it. Entirely avoiding the expectations of being there. Because it seems the ultimate landlord expected behavior from his tenants. And it seems Gideon is only reminding the messenger of that part of the tale, but missing the cautions for sure. Think about it. Because we can go back to Deuteronomy 30 and directly tie what God said would happen to this. Gideon just wanted all the blessing side. I just want to talk about the why. It's funny. This could be us today saying, "Oh God, things aren't going well, so I guess he's not here." And it's like, I think we might want to go back in and talk about the why we think we're here, why we're really here, and I don't think we pause to take obedience into consideration. Again, maybe we're only considering part of the story, like Gideon, just in our lives and times and stories. We think we're in a certain state, and we even judge God for that state. At a minimum, we judge others for the state, but certainly we don't judge ourselves. But are we curious to ask the questions, even the brutally honest questions? Why am I really here in this circumstance? And is our response only part of the story? Are we leaving out parts that also pertain to us? We don't know really what Gideon knows. Yet for us in this story, we can say that we have a fuller picture. We know more. Okay, I'm smiling because I was researching and writing this, right? And the folks at the Bible Project have released their third video in their Sermon on the Mount series. And filling in the gaps is part of the theme I think you'll enjoy. I will say that we do have more parts filled in, yet I'm going to also say that maybe it's because we have more pieces to fill in the gaps. Maybe more than Gideon did. So this messenger that God has sent to Gideon, interesting too, if you read the text, it's a conversation in mixed persona, right? Because Gideon is acknowledging the authority of the messenger. The messenger is responding as if they are words from God himself. Go read the context. And remember, all caps Lord, that's Yod He Vav He. Okay? And yet still he, Gideon, still doubts. Because he asks for a sign. He asks the messenger, and then he says, wait, don't go away. I'm going to go prepare a sacrifice. He goes, prepares a lamb, some unleavened bread, brings it out. The messenger says, okay, put it on the rock. Now, pour out the broth. So he pours out the broth, making everything wet. Not a good start for burnt sacrifice. The messenger touches the rock with his staff, and the sacrifice burns up. Everything. And then, poof, the messenger disappears. I think the messenger disappearing probably scared Gideon. Obviously, because then he says, I realize that he was the messenger from God. I'm going to fill in the sign that Gideon asked for as well, that was met. He got his sign. So God says, after that, although it's not clear how he says it, he says, hey, peace. Don't fear. You're not going to die. Gideon, in response, he builds an altar. Names it peace. Now, Tim brings up the point, again, a good point to ponder. If you had that sign, that burned up sacrifice that was wet, mind you, and a disappearing messenger, would you then, from that point on, do everything that God told you to do? I think we'd like to think that we would. Yet again, just knowing our propensity for things, I'm not convinced that we would. And at times, I'd say we still are not. I propose that we're still in a mindset of not, right? That it's interesting because, again, we think we would. But here's why. Do we believe these stories? That we honestly believe what you read is real. Embrace them for real for yourself. Because I'm not convinced that we actually do. We try to acknowledge that it should have been real for them, and we look at them like, what were you thinking? And yet today, are we doing the same? It didn't happen to me, so I don't have to have that level of commitment or belief. Only if it happened to me would I believe. More things to think about. Thomas sneaks in there. So for a brief time, he's emboldened. He builds the peace altar, and he quickly retreats. So this next part, Tim doesn't talk about because he steps forward in the verses, and I get why. It's because of time. But those next verses, God tells Gideon to do quite a few things, right? First, he has to go take his father's bull, and then he needs to bring a second bull for a sacrifice, pull down the altar to Baal, tear down the Asherah, build an altar to God, use the wood from the torn down Asherah to burn the sacrifice to God. So he grabs 10 of his own men, his own servants, but he's scared of his dad. I'm guessing he's scared of his dad because maybe his father's more integrated to what's going on around him. He could be a leader in the community. Who knows? But either way, Gideon does it all, yet not during the day. He does it under the cover of night. So the next morning, the town wakes up and finds it. They go in search of and they figure out it's Gideon. So it seems night didn't cover him up enough. So the town folks go to Gideon's father and they demand that he hand him over. You know, Dad might not be as brave as most, and he's certainly not called like Gideon was. But I thought his answer was great. He says, if Baal is so powerful, let him find Gideon, sort him out, let Baal fight his own battles. Of course, it's paraphrased, but I believe it captures the moment. And then also there's this small but significant event here too. Gideon's father, he gives him a new name, Jerubbaal. It's in Judges 6:32. It says, therefore, on that day, he named him Jerubbaal. That is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he had torn down his altar. Seems maybe Gideon had misjudged his dad after all. So after this, Gideon, and we have an interesting moment here too, the Spirit of God comes upon him. So it seems maybe the empowering of the Spirit, the emboldening of the Holy Spirit, it's not just a post-Jesus thing. So he's empowered again, and he blows his shofar, his trumpet, to rally the people. And even some allies, the Abizarites, right? They are called into the fray, right? Along with the people from his own tribe of Manasseh. Even after all of that, Gideon decides to have a negotiation with God. This is when he says to God, if you'll deliver Israel through me as you've spoken, then I'm going to put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there's dew on the fleece and the floor is dry, I will know that you will deliver Israel through me as you've spoken. Well, lo and behold, the fleece is wet, the ground is dry, and matter of fact, the fleece is so wet that he has to wring it out and it fills up a bowl. I'm guessing that point would be a big bowl. So hey, miracle happens. Let's go. And then you hear the screech of the record. Because of course, the next thing out of Gideon's mouth is not, let's go, God. What do we do next? Then we get chapter 6:39, right? Then Gideon said to God, don't let your anger burn against me that I may speak once more. Please, let me make a test once more with the fleece. Let it be now dry only on the fleece, and let there be dew all around on the ground. God, as patient and loving as only he can be, God does the switcheroo, dry fleece, wet ground. Okay, now after going through this story, is this really a good thing? Is Gideon really behaving and responding as he should be, as we should be? I'll agree that he is responding probably as we would, but is that really what we should? Next week, we're going to continue on this topic with more shofars, rallies, more water, and God flips the story. So we're going to continue to see about Gideon and how all this ties into the why we're here, where he's at, and maybe why we need this cautionary tale. So, thanks for with us tonight on another edition of Outside the Class with Gideon, testing faith on the Dusty Feet.